Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm Brett Davis. Joining me today is the Center Square's Eastern Washington reporter, Tim Schumann. You authored a story recently headlined Spokane, $50 million short of legal obligation in general fund. Can you give us some background on this figure? Where does that come from? And as I understand it, there's some friction between the city's budget manager and the mayor's office.
Yeah, that friction extends to the city council and the mayor's office. But the budget manager for the city council, Matt Boston, went over numbers in a meeting last week. And the highlight of the meeting was essentially the unallocated reserve portion of the general fund for the past 5 years has dropped from roughly $25 million in 2019 to about negative $10 million in 2023.
That's a big slide.
Fairly precipitous. I believe he called it a rapid decline.
What was the cause of that decline?
The cause of that decline, there are varying causes. Part of it is tax revenues everywhere are slowing despite inflation generally, increasing tax revenues as the economy has been slowing down. Part of the issue that Matt brought up in the meeting was that the city has been spending one-time funds on recurring expenses. So essentially, money would come in from grants at the state or federal level or taxes that were, being reimbursed from the state level back to the municipality. And the city would spend these funds in ways that were not commensurate with their, income statement. They would say, we got this money and it is a one-time grant. And then they would spend it on, a recurring bill, like, paying their sewer or water bill with it.
Did they give any explanation for why they chose this course of action? It seems rather short-sighted.
I think a lot of it had to do with COVID spending, though during the meeting, budget manager Matt Boston said that, we're well past that. We shouldn't be using that as an excuse anymore. But a lot of it, I think, also came down to the housing and drug crisis that Spokane is currently experiencing and the large amount of funds that they're currently allocating to that.
It sounds like a perfect financial storm, so to speak.
It does. And in addition, he brought up contract negotiations with two of the major unions, the police and fire unions. Those contract negotiations resulted in approximately $8 million of back pay that had to be pushed forward into this budget. And part of that came from the, reserve funds.
So what does the city plan on doing to, get itself out of this financial hole? I assume there's a plan, or at least the beginnings of a plan.
There's the beginnings of a plan, but as of yet, there's no real hard and fast plan. There are 6 more meetings scheduled between now and July 10th, when the city council is going to vote on a supplemental budget ordinance. That supplemental budget ordinance is meant to adjust the budget mid-year for this fiscal year and set the tone for what will ultimately become the budget for next fiscal year, which will happen sometime later in the fall.
It was a good job. You anticipated my next question. I was going to ask if there was a timeline on this, and you're apparently psychic today.
The main thing that the budget manager, Matt Boston, went over was essentially that the general fund doesn't have the capacity to keep absorbing these recurring expenses with one-time funds. Because when you do that, you're not replenishing your strategic reserve. According to Spokane Municipal Code, the city shall maintain a minimum general fund balance of roughly 25% of ongoing expenses in the general fund. These funds must be unencumbered, meaning they have to mark them to market. And, that means that in a down market like we're currently experiencing, those funds are worth significantly less. So
I'm going to guess they're under that 25% figure.
They're significantly under that 25% figure. According to Boston's calculations, they're roughly at 15.5%-ish of their general fund.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Tim Schumann, this is Brett Davis. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.